Hi everyone, I'm Anya Parampil and this is Redlines. On September 17th, police in Denver, Colorado arrested 4 members of the Party for Socialism and Liberation over their involvement in local demonstrations demanding justice for Elijah McClain, a 23-year-old black man whom police essentially strangled to death in August of 2019. Russell Ruch, Lillian House, Joel Northam, and Eliza Lucero were rounded up in a coordinated crackdown targeting the protest movement, which has swept the nation since the police killing of George Floyd earlier this year. To discuss the details of the case, I'm joined now by Eugene Puryear, a presenter on Breakthrough News and organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Welcome to Redlines, Eugene.
Well, thank you, Anya. I appreciate it. Honored to be here as always.
What is the latest information you have regarding these detained individuals? Have you been in contact with them? And just briefly remind listeners about the case of Elijah McClain. Why were these people in the streets protesting to begin with?
Well, I personally have not been in contact with anyone. Everyone has received, legal contact. 3 of the people you mentioned, Eliza Lucero, Lillian House, and Joel Northam, are actually still in jail. Russell is not. I think that what we are seeing is a, ridiculous but not that surprising process with those who have been arrested. I mean, these big flashy arrests, in some cases using SWAT teams and MRAP vehicles and things like that, using the different jurisdictional things to try to keep people in jail longer. The whole real nature of the arrest is designed to criminalize those who are being tagged here and criminalize this movement, this protest movement that was demanding justice for Elijah McClain, as you mentioned, and all victims of police terror. The DA in this case, who has charged these activists with ridiculous charges, things like kidnapping just for having a protest, and we can come back to that, but the nature of it being, this is the same DA who refused to charge the 3 cops who were involved in the murder of Elijah McClain. And so he is prosecuting his political opponents. I mean, what an unbelievable conflict of interest. People have been mobilizing, as much of the Denver press has noted. The people arrested have been, notable leaders and participants in this protest movement of thousands of people in the Denver area demanding justice in this outrageous police murder. And instead, the leaders and the movement itself are being criminalized. The use of, inciting a riot charges, impeding highways, kidnapping, all of that is designed, along with these, massive police presence arrests, to try to criminalize this movement for justice, to try to discredit it, to try to break it up, to try to sap it of strength in order to protect the positioning of the district attorney's office and the police department in Aurora and the Denver area, which has been so broadly exposed on this case as in many others.
And what exactly happened to Elijah McClain in August of 2019?
Well, he was detained by 3 police officers. And of course, at the time, they claimed that he tried to pull a gun on him. I mean, what happened is someone called the 911 and said that there was someone walking down the street in a ski mask, but they said the person didn't have a weapon. They didn't think anyone was in danger. I don't know why exactly they called 911, but be that as it may, 911 came. They claimed he went for a gun, but ultimately these police officers held him down on the ground, handcuffed for 15 minutes. They put him in a chokehold, put him unconscious at one point, had severely obstructed his breathing. He ends up throwing up several times because of that, and actually then apologizing to them and basically pleading for his own life. The EMT comes, they lie. They say he was, hopped up on some drug coming with superhuman strength. So he gets this massive shot of ketamine from an EMT. Ultimately has a heart attack. He slips into a coma and he dies. Completely brutal murder of Elijah McClain. And I think that the fact that these individuals were not charged with murder, in the wake of the brutal killing of George Floyd, and Elijah McClain also said, "I can't breathe." Just the evocativeness of that reality, I think really is what we've seen. And when you look at these charges stemming from protests, these are mass protests of thousands of people of all different types. And it's an attempt to criminalize and suggest this is some sort of criminal enterprise rather than a political movement that's demanding justice.
And the details of the arrest of these individuals are pretty terrifying. Lillian House, for example, was driving in her car and surrounded by 5 police officers, suggesting they were tracking her. An MRAP was involved in the arrest of Joel Northam when a SWAT team actually showed up at his door and refused to present an arrest warrant. You've said these arrests amount to payback for the fact these individuals led effective, peaceful demonstrations which embarrassed local police in Aurora. How is that claim reflected in their charges, specifically when it comes to the dates in question?
When you look at what's happening here, and you look at, for instance, the July 3rd protest, that is the impetus of this so-called kidnapping charge, where it's right around the time that a photo is released of 3 other police officers mocking the death of Elijah McClain, laughing and joking about it, and thousands of people, of course, outraged. They come out to a police station. People say that they're not going to leave until there's justice. I would say in the traditions of civil disobedience that the country pretends to support and to celebrate, and that is being called kidnapping, going to demand justice and demand you won't leave until then. And you can see on, I believe it was June 27th, the protest that went viral around the world where the police cleared out a violin vigil, called it some sort of illegal gathering, and brutally repressed it with riot police. And so, what we see time and again is the Aurora police, they murder Elijah McClain, the district attorney's office, and by the way, this DA Young is a Democrat. They refuse to bring charges. They protect these killer cops. Other cops in the department think it's funny. They're laughing and joking. It's a part of their culture. It's obviously deeply ingrained in the broader Denver area, where there are a number of police killings that have also gone unsolved or unprosecuted for so long. And it adds up in this moment of global or national uprising that has happened since the death of George Floyd. A major movement has emerged here or in this area and around this. And I think that it's very clear that from the point of view of the authorities, that this is a dangerous reality that has really, in a true sense, exposed many of the crimes that I think that they had hoped to hide. And so, it's difficult not to see it as some sort of retaliation against this movement to try to break it up and to try to destroy it.
You mentioned District Attorney Dave Young in Aurora. He said, as you mentioned, that there was no evidence in the Elijah McClain case to support homicide charges or a homicide ruling, yet he is responsible for levying these charges, including kidnapping against protesters. Where exactly does the kidnapping charge come from? And what does all of this suggest about District Attorney Young?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I mentioned previously, it comes from a protest outside of a police precinct in relationship to a photo that had come out showing 3 police officers from the Aurora PD mocking and laughing and joking the death of Elijah McClain. A number of people were outraged. They came out to protest. People were demanding justice, and people were saying, we're going to stay here. We're going to not leave until we demand justice. I think when you talk about what we see every Martin Luther King Day and what we hear all Black History Month from all of these hypocritical officials about how they love the civil rights movement, very much in the vein of that kind of political action. But in this case, it's being called kidnapping, as if this was some sort of as if they have a gun to their head, or if they'd had, chained and locked the doors or something like that just didn't even happen. And it's so absurd, but it's obviously an attempt to scare people from coming out, to get people entrapped in legal cases, just like we are right now talking about with these individuals who are arrested, to try to, raise the legal precedents for how much they can suppress and repress movements. Right now in this country, I think it's very obvious that there is a bipartisan effort, quite frankly, coming from both parties to restrict protest and so-called First Amendment activity only to the tamest, most controllable, least effective type of opposition that there can be. It's an attempt to criminalize the ability to stand up for their own human and political rights.
Yeah, I saw footage while it was happening of Lillian leading some of that occupation of the police station, and they actually forced a phone call with the Aurora police chief through that tactic.
We just got word that Chief Wilson has requested a call with me. I don't know. Woo! Take a call, girl, take a call. So we're about to give her a call. Put it on speaker, put it on speaker. Speaker.
Quiet.
It's like, sorry, what was that? This is Chief Wilson. Okay. Yeah, this is Lillian with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. What's up? I think we know perfectly well that if the will is there, you will fire these two officers. That is completely unconvincing, and I want to be completely clear. We are not buying that shit. Our demand is not moving, it's not changing. Rodima and Woodyard tonight, fire them.
And I didn't see any protest that effective anywhere else in the country. It was really a model, I feel like, that could have been replicated, and they were really leading by example there. I saw another video of Joel speaking outside of the precinct and mentioning that undercover police were spreading lies about them, claiming that the peaceful demonstrators were going to charge the precinct, and he said they were trying to actively criminalize their protest, which seems to make sense now that they've actually done just that and arrested the leaders of this movement.
Tonight, we will once again express our constitutional right to peacefully freedom of speech and assemble and all that stuff. Because we will not be intimidated by your unconstitutional and tyrannical use of force. You claim that undercover police overheard protesters planning to storm the police precinct, a very convenient lie that you have no way of proving and thus can be used to declare any protest unlawful. Well, let us make it clear to you and your lying pigs this time, we have no intentions to storm the precinct this time. We will make sure that every single person here tonight does not move from their spot surrounding the precinct until you publicly agree to fire Randy Rodima and Nathan Woodyard.
What does this experience tell us about the role local Democratic officials play in enabling this kind of aggressive police crackdown we've witnessed under the Trump administration?
Well, I'll just say first and foremost, hats off to the people of Denver in terms of, things being a model action out there. I think the Denver area has been one of the most organized and the most consistent places in this entire uprising of bringing out large amounts of people and really building a powerful grassroots movement. So again, I think that's why people are being targeted. But yeah, I think you see the DA Young is a Democrat. You saw Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., who was talking about Black Lives Matter on the DNC, saying the Trump administration wasn't tough enough on protesters. Obviously, Ted Wheeler, Jenny Durkin, the mayors of Portland and Seattle, respectively, all saying they care quite a bit about Black Lives Matter, but obviously their police have been, very much in the forefront of national and international scandal during this uprising because of the brutality they've used against large demonstrations of various different types. And the same goes on and on. I think when you look at the reality of what's happening, Trump, of course, is running in the ultimate law and order sense. And of course, he is the police. He has all the endorsements of the police unions and many of these paramilitary militia types. So he's very much running in that vein. There have been 300 federal arrests. But what Trump has done by staking out this lane of extreme law and order is, it's really created almost like an arms race of sorts of the Democrats who, of course, want to walk the line and say, well, we care about Black Lives Matter, but at the end of the day, wanting to distance themselves from the movement that's in the streets by saying that they agree with the crackdown on political ideologies. That's why Biden would say something like anarchists deserve to be in jail. That's why he would be running ads in the Midwest that caricature the uprising as some sort of, violent criminal vandalism and don't put anything in the context of the oppression of Black people here in the United States today. And I think that at the end of the day, what we are seeing is on the local level, on the state level, and on the federal level, an attempt to to really crack down, to put a lid on the fact that there is a grassroots resistance of millions of people that kind of, however people are orienting towards the elections in the fall, people are wanting to stay in the streets, wanting to stay engaged, get more organized and fight back. I think that's scary to people like the DAs and the police and those who back them all around the country who feel that, perhaps their crimes being exposed means that their days could be numbered in these political offices and being able to have institutions with the type of power that they have. And so, really, I think Democrats, to say that, the relationship between the Republicans and the Democrats on this, is one of degree, I think, as much as it is one of philosophy when we look at arrests like what's happening in Denver, what's happening in some of the cities that I've mentioned before. Oregon with a Democratic governor, a celebrated Democratic governor, allowing the federal deputizing of the state police to allow state federal charges, Bill Barr's charges, to be more specifically brought against protesters in Portland. So, I mean, you can see that it's deeply intertwined for the broader system of stability. That's the role of the police, the broader system of capitalist stability in this country, maintaining that and wanting to prevent disruptive movements that are demanding transformative change from succeeding.
Throughout the Trump administration, we've heard so many Democrats and people who consider themselves part of the liberal resistance talk about opposing fascism and standing up to Trump. But these people, these individuals who are in custody right now, are the ones who are doing the work in these communities and actually putting their bodies on the line, which brings me to my next question. What is the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and why does it pose a unique threat to both the Republican and Democratic establishments?
Well, the Party for Socialism and Liberation is a group of people who have come together around the belief, principally, I mean, I'm simplifying it here. Go to liberationnews.org if you want to learn more. But that the root of our problems is capitalism. The fact that everything is produced for profit. The fact there's more empty homes than there are homeless people. All those kind of contradictions that we see about the great wealth combined with the great misery of the society that we live in. That kind of profit-centered society is wrong, and that we need a people-centered society that really puts the resources of society at disposal of people's needs and people's wants as a whole. The majority of people, working class, oppressed, and exploited, and poor people. I think that is we come together to use those unique experiences to try to craft a strategy and build an organization that, in alliance with others, hopefully moving forward and growing through the growth of a broader movement, can bring that type of transformative change from a profit-centered to a people-centered society. I think it's a unique threat in the sense that all, I think, radical groups like that say, let's go to the root of the problem. Let's look at the social system itself. Let's look at the real reasons why we have crime in the sense that we know it, and why the police are necessary, or why we think that in the context of the society we live in. I think we have to go to those deeper questions, and any of the political movements and ideologies that are doing that, I think, are starting to gain resonance in the population. People know we need serious change, and that it's just, it's not just about sensitivity training or de-escalation training or cops living in people's neighborhoods or whatever, that it's deeper than that, and it needs to be, considered more deeply than that. And I think that is, it is a unique threat to the mainstream parties because they have no solutions to these massive challenges that are facing humanity. They genuflect towards them, they speak to them, but they don't really offer solutions that meet the scale of the problem. And I think in that sense, we need leadership for humanity that's going to, stop trying to drive things off a cliff the way it looks like it's going now.
Yeah, I know from my own experience working with PSL that party members are very disciplined and make a point not to engage in or encourage illegal activity in general. Would you say that's an important part of the party's structure?
Well, I mean, I think that, from the point of view of what we espouse is that, the tactics that correspond to particular moments, have to be determined there. But I do think that acting in a unified way, in a solidified way, in a centralized way, so where, what we do with intent and with purpose, and in a way that we feel can be defended and, certainly understood and supported. And so, we try to, I think, especially build broad platforms in cases like this to, demand justice to bring out all the people, not just the people who are socialist, who want to protest and want to do these different things. But, that being said, I think, obviously a major element of division in the populace is this whole good protester, bad protester narrative. And I think not that that's what you were suggesting, but I do think that that's, an important element of understanding what's going on in this uprising now is the attempt to criminalize protests in the way they're doing in Denver is so outrageous because it is, well within the bounds of, I think, the traditions of protest that this country allegedly celebrates. But there's also sort of a greater truth there that, I think there are other elements and other elements of justification for the the scale of what we've seen across the country in many different ways and many different forms of expression, and the attempt to criminalize the one element of it and one edge of it is just part of a broader attempt to discredit everything and to take the entire uprising and movement out of the context of what's really relevant, which is that thousands of people are being killed by the police in the context of maintaining the worst sort of social and economic conditions on oppressed and exploited communities in this country, and that needs to stop, and it needs to stop right away.
What are the next steps PSL is taking in order to defend party members arrested in Denver, and how can viewers help support their fight for justice?
Yeah, well, I'll just say right off the top, go to pslweb.org/donate for Denver. That's the number 4. pslweb.org/donate for Denver, and you can support the fight back that's going to need to happen. Thankfully, we also have the assistance of the Colorado Freedom Fund in terms of bail, but there are going to be so many charges in terms of getting people out after they get out, waging this fight. I mean, people are facing serious charges, multiple different, heavy felonies, many years in jail. So it's going to be a fight. pslweb.org/donate for the number 4 Denver. Donate for Denver. And I think the next steps we're taking are a few fold. Obviously, we're trying to build as much solidarity as we possibly can. We're also asking people, and you can see the links to this if you check out all of our social media. If you go to pslweb.org and find out a solidarity statement for organizations to show that there are, and individuals to show that there are huge numbers of people in this country and around the world who are willing to show solidarity. Secondly, we're not taking our foot off the gas in demanding justice for Elijah McClain. They want to crush this movement. We don't think that that's going to happen. This past Saturday, over about 1,000 people marched. They went to the jail as well to show solidarity with those who have been arrested, and also to demand justice for all victims of police terror. And I think that we will continue to be pushing that forward in the Denver area and continue to fight for this movement. And I think all around the country, that's the thing we have to remember. I mean, there's been 300 people arrested with federal charges, thousands and thousands and thousands of people arrested at the local level by different police. There are heavy charges everywhere. This is a serious system of repression that's coming down on the movement, but that's because they want to shut it down. So staying in the streets in general is one of our important tasks, and one of the things we're going to continue to push and continue to do. But pslweb.org/donate for Denver. Please support if you can.
And where can people follow you, Eugene, and see your work with Breakthrough News?
They can follow me personally at Eugene Puryear on Twitter, and they can see us at BT Newsroom on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're also on YouTube, Breakthrough News on YouTube.
I encourage everyone to check it out. It's an important resource for people who want to stay up to date on the movement and news from around the world. So Eugene Puryear, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much, Anya.